Hello, Religion 151. My name is Xavier Weiss, and my project is on religion and mental health. This is going to be like a video essay slash mini movie where I talk about the importance of faith in maintaining and fostering a healthy mental state, as well as the resources that a church or religious community can provide for somebody going through a mental health crisis. And I'll also be talking about the different ways in which a religious community or a religious experience can potentially traumatize somebody and be deteriorative to their mental state. I'll be providing personal experiences with my own personal experience with the church, as well as articles that I've researched that support evidence for the points that I make in the video. One thing that I want to make clear before I start the video is that the points that I'm making here are entirely dependent on individual circumstance and the individual person. I think that religion is carried out by certain people, and those people might not make the best decisions that represent the religion at large, but they still do them anyways, which might give religion a bad reputation or it might over glorify it. It all depends on the circumstance and the situation that you find yourself in. And again, there is no right or wrong way to look at religion and the impact that it has on mental health. It is all subjective. For some people, religion and faith can be key in maintaining a healthy mental state. And the National Alliance on Mental Illness states it best because they say that a proper religious institution can offer community where a certain person can feel as though they belong and they feel safe and trusted with a group of like-minded individuals. And a religion can also offer ritual that can help people cope with a lot of difficult situations that they may find themselves in and provide structure and allows them to comprehend the things that are happening to them by providing teachings of gratitude and compassion and forgiveness. And it can offer a lot of good lessons about life that fortify somebody's mental state. I think a fantastic example of religion having a positive impact on somebody's mental health can be found on the Stigma podcast, which is a podcast that challenges the misconceptions of mental health, where it explains the situation of this recovering drug addict named Michael Perrin, who is now a sponsor at his local church, and his experience in reconnecting with his faith, helping him combat his drug addiction and get his life out of the spiral that it was in. And the several therapeutic benefits that prayer and religion have to offer are exemplified on an article by Sandra Feder, published by Stanford News, where she compares the act of praying and going to church having the same benefits for some people as intensive cognitive behavioral therapy. But in order to get more personal with the subject, I would like to go into the experiences that I have had with the church and the effects that I think that it has played on my mental health. Going to church as a kid, I never really took it as seriously as I do going now. I think that a child at a relatively young stage in their development doesn't have the necessary mental tools in their arsenal to really process and perceive exactly what it is that's happening. I went to church when I was younger just because my parents went to church. But as I got older and I started to involve myself more with the community at my church, um, I felt really accepted and really respected by both the religious authority members, staff members of the church, and actually the churchgoers as well were really accepting of mostly my age. I feel like they know that kids my age when I was like 16 or 15 and I was just like going to church with my friends. They know that we don't really take a lot of things seriously and we just wanted to have fun and just, be there with our friends, and they were totally cool about that. while still trying to like push us to pursue our interests. So both me and my friend were really into music at the time. We both played guitar, and they gave us the opportunity to be part of the band at church. And actually, the first time that I stepped foot on the UM campus was on a church trip to go see the UM band play with my church band. And I wouldn't have been able to get that experience if the good people at my church didn't push me to pursue those interests and further foster these ambitions that I had. And having people besides my parents be the ones to push me to do the things that I'm interested in and pursue different avenues of expression really helped me out in terms of my mental health, because instead of somebody coming to you and telling you that your passions and your ambitions are worthless and that you should spend more time in Sunday school, and if you don't come to Sunday Mass, then we're not going to give you the support that we're giving you. That really helped me out in terms of like gaining a sense of community and acceptance in a place that is kind of foreign to me. Aside from fostering personal ambitions and passions, my church also knew how to implement aid for people going through mental crises. And I can offer an example. One of my um, friends from high school, who also went to my church, had a severe mental crisis in the middle of class. And instead of shaming or ostracizing this kid, the church was able to lend a helping hand and put him and his family in contact with a psychologist and give him the help that he deserves instead of making him feel like trash. Which sounds as like it's the bare minimum that a church could do, but you would be surprised at how negligent some church communities can be to issues of mental health and people going through crises like that. However, I am aware that not everybody who has attended church has not had the positive experience that I have had. Um, I want to say that while I was at church, my whole heart wasn't in it the way that I see other people's faith be so invested in their church community. But I felt really accepted, and I never felt humiliated. I never felt shamed. I never felt this sense of fear that's instilled in some other church going communities. When an individual is exposed to a church whose key cornerstone of being is manipulation instead of benevolence and forgiveness, that person can develop what is called religious trauma syndrome, which, to quote Dr. Marlene Winnell, is the condition experienced by people who are struggling with leaving an authoritarian dogmatic religion and coping with the damage of indoctrination. Some examples of this trauma running really deep can be in instances where people have grown up in churches that blatantly have homophobic and sexist doctrines, and that can be really hard to recover from because it instills this sense of internal hatred and can lead to a lot of self-esteem issues and rejection of who you are. And any church that follows these doctrines is using them as a tactic of manipulation to have a firm grip on the morals and ideals that an individual has instead of letting them express themselves freely. And the church should love the flock for who they are and not molding them into perfect churchgoers that are in need of repentance and need to earn God's love and need to earn the acceptance of their fellow churchgoers and the authorities at that church. And finally, a especially difficult instance of trauma that is really hard to overcome is when the people in power abuse their power for their own sick, sadistic paraphilia. And that has been the case and has been the case for a lot of sexual assault and molestation instances in the church, in part by priests and religious authority figures onto young churchgoers. And in a recent NPR article, this is still going on and is still as prevalent. And It is honestly sickening. This is where the concept of spiritual or religious abuse comes into play, and WebMD defines this as any exertion of force or control over somebody using religious beliefs or faith. And it's not limited to any one specific denomination or religious sect, and can at sometimes even not even be limited to happening only at church. A lot of people can, in their relationships, spiritually or religiously abuse somebody. But for the sake of this video, we're just going to focus on spiritual abuse in the church, for time's sake. One mode of spiritual abuse is conformity and limiting independent thought in a church environment. Most unhealthy churches don't really have a lot of space for disagreements and can really scrutinize and shun people who have conflicting opinions that than the ones that are presented at the church, which could lead to a lot of tension and, again, ostracization in that community by the churchgoers and by the religious authority members at that church. I think this is a good example of a lot of people having their minds made up by what the church believes instead of going out and doing their research and coming to their own conclusions. They'd rather just take what the church believes and that's what they believe. And that's pretty toxic and pretty unhealthy because it's essentially creating this like army of drones that are willfully being bred to perpetuate information that they may or may not 100% agree with. And it's bad enough that they perpetuate this information, but I think another key element is also criticizing and shunning people who believe otherwise. And to me, this has been an issue with my church community because of my beliefs on modern issues like abortion and sexuality, or even personal things like premarital sex and masturbation. A lot of these things are shunned by the church community, and to me, have no real significance in testing the moral character of a person. And when you do not come to those conclusions on your own and instead are manipulated by an organization that just wants you to believe something because they want you to believe it, that can breed an unhealthy cesspool of misinformation and brainwashing. And the church at times uses fear and shame to keep people, I guess, shackled to the ideologies that they want them to believe. The fear comes in the form of, if you disagree with something that the Lord is saying, then that's the devil trying to tempt you away from the light of the Lord. Shame is another tool of control that some religious institutions can use. And some examples can be, they can use certain scriptures and verses to embarrass you or make you feel pressure to do things that you're not comfortable with, and then shame you for not feeling comfortable for doing them. And this, along with fear, can create a very toxic environment that allows no room for independent thought and actually punishes any conflicting opinion outside of the doctrine that they're trying to promote, which can lead to a lot of trauma because it makes you feel dirty and ashamed to have these normal thoughts, and it really messes up your perception of how you judge yourself, how you judge others, how you judge the world, and can lead to a lot of psychological scars that can take years to heal. So, all in all, in a final analysis, religion's impact on mental health can be very positive and very helpful and very benevolent. I've seen it with my own eyes. There are documents to back up that proof. While at the same time, in a completely different environment, under a different set of circumstances, surrounded by different people, it can be very, very harmful. You can get brainwashed, you can get shamed, you can get controlled by fear, you can get people to believe ideologies that they do not believe in, that they have been conditioned to believe in based on repetition, fear mongering, and social conditioning. All that aside, though, being part of a healthy environment and being healthily in touch with your faith, that's the key word, is honestly one of the best things that can happen to a person that is going through a mental health crisis. It's ironic in a sense that the same organization that can help somebody out of a rut that they're in and completely and dramatically change their life for the better can also be the deteriorating force causing another person to spiral out of control in a vortex of doubt and shame and guilt and fear. And that duality is something that is innate to the study of religion.